On the 28th of April 2025, Duolingo CEO Luis von Ahn announced via the company's LinkedIn page that Duolingo would be going AI first. He specified that, among other things, it meant that they would stop using contractors to do work that AI can handle, AI use would be part of what they look for in hiring, and that headcount would only be given if a team cannot automate more of their work. The backlash on social media was swift and fierce, even on LinkedIn, which probably has the most pro-AI users of any social media platform. You know, judging by all the obviously AI-generated posts and the obviously AI-generated comments. But the reaction on its official TikTok page, which has developed a reputation for silly, sometimes edgy humor, was the worst. Every recent post was flooded with comments critical of Duolingo's AI-heavy direction, with users commenting that they're going to delete the app, questioning whether the post was AI-generated, and sarcastically saying, if we post funny memes, maybe people will forget how we wanted to fire our employees and use AI. Even now, the top posts when searching Duolingo on TikTok are critical of their AI use. Shortly after their announcement and the backlash that ensued, Duolingo stopped posting on TikTok for about a week, down from multiple times a day. They then resumed posting, but less frequently, before going dark and making all the videos on their profile private. Then, they published a 2-minute video where a masked member of the social media team quote-unquote grilled the CEO about the AI-focused direction the company would be taking.
I know you're upset. I know people are upset. I want to make this right, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
First question. So are there going to be any more humans left at this company?
Luis von Ahn released an expanded statement on LinkedIn that same day that walked back, or clarified, his previous one. But the damage had already been done, with the top comments being largely negative on LinkedIn and entirely negative on TikTok. I'd imagine this was the Duolingo social media team's biggest challenge yet, and something of a case study on the limitations and downsides of meme marketing. In fact, I made a video on that very topic a while ago, I'll link it in the description. But more than anything, it illustrated the strength of negative feeling towards AI. And Duolingo definitely isn't the first company to encounter this kind of response. In fact, it's surprising they didn't anticipate it more. In June last year, the Prince Charles Cinema dropped plans to screen an AI-written film, following public backlash, despite it being an experiment in filmmaking by a filmmaker hoping to engage in the discussion about AI and its negative impact on the arts. Lego, having used AI-generated photos on its website, acknowledged it went against its own policies and took the images down. Even Doctor Who, a sci-fi show whose audience we might expect to be more receptive to the use of newer technologies, acquiesced to audience demands and said it wouldn't use AI again. A lot of us really hate AI, but not every company has backed down. Many have boldly pressed onwards instead. Lifestyle magazine Sheer Luxe introduced a new AI fashion and lifestyle editor in June last year, and was on the receiving end of criticism at the time, partly because the editor appeared to be a person of colour and was potentially taking the job from an already underrepresented group. It was forced onto the back foot to defend itself, but despite the criticism, stuck with its decision, and is still, to this day, posting on the account. In fact, companies and individuals are seemingly less apologetic now, embracing a perspective that AI is the future and its march is inevitable. But people have legitimate concerns about the impact of AI on society. So the question is, what's the way forward for those of us who are worried about where things are heading? This is The Internet is Eating Itself, and let's get into it. The average consumer's first direct experience with AI feels recent. To many, if not most, it started with ChatGPT, which was released to the public in December 2022. Its growth was explosive, of course, as people had their minds blown by the technology. It reached 100 million users in the space of just a couple of months, beaten only by Threads, which isn't really a fair comparison because of its easy sign-up of existing Instagram users. By February of this year, it had reached 400 million users and become an incredibly pervasive part of modern life. For many, this was the first meaningful experience of AI and is potentially the most common experience of it, useful and even entertaining. Prior to this, the most common experience would have been Siri, Alexa, or Google Assistant. While they made use of voice recognition and machine learning, they had a weak, even terrible reputation. For many, they were useless, as they struggled to understand basic commands if not expressed in a quite specific way.
You don't seem to have an app named Note. Thanks, Peach. We could see if the App Store has it.
No. Read me my note. Thank you speech.
I don't understand. Open a Spodnape speech.
No. Read my note. Thank you speech.
Who, me?
This made them somewhat useless and limited in their functionality, with many exclusively using them for very simple tasks like timers. Chatbots are another experience of AI that many had before ChatGPT, often in a customer service context. These are primitive compared to LLMs, using decision trees to provide answers or take simple actions. Basically a series of if-then logic decisions, combined with natural language processing to interpret what humans have written. These were limited in their effectiveness and still struggle to understand user intent, often relying on selecting options instead to avoid misunderstanding the user. These chatbots technically go back to the 60s, but the earlier incarnations would barely be considered AI by many. Maybe this is why anti-AI sentiment was weaker, as contemporary interactions with AI were much more simplistic. Of course, AI has been evoking fear through sci-fi depictions for some time now, such as in The Terminator, Ex Machina, and I, Robot, posing a threat to humanity in action-packed films. But this type of threat still feels distant, more robot-y. AI's current threat to humanity is looking more like the film Her, subtly undermining us in a way that seems mundane, but is still serious. As AI has become more widely and directly available, the threat to jobs has become clearer. This is perhaps most obvious in the most common form of LLMs, such as ChatGPT, Gemini, and Meta AI. But it's now a pervasive part of applications too, with there even being applications to build applications. And now we're seeing actual job losses as a result of job functions being replaced with AI. Copywriting jobs are maybe the easiest to find stories on, maybe because AI is writing the stories, commonly appearing on top jobs that will be replaced by AI lists. Why pay tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for a squishy, imperfect human when you can bash a prompt into ChatGPT and have it do the same thing, right? Copywriters would, of course, say that they bring more to the table and do things that AI can't, currently at least, such as bringing creativity and a distinctly human touch. Giada Nizali, owner of UK-based Craft Copy, writes in a blog post, "Writing is actually the smallest part of her job as a copywriter," and proceeds to list what she does beyond writing, such as asking questions, analysing audiences, and researching the subject. But the fact is, AI can do pretty much everything she lists, especially with ChatGPT's deep research mode, or copywriting specific custom GPTs. Based off the experience shared by Redditors on the r/copywriting subreddit, AI does seem to pose a serious threat to the profession, with many sharing their experiences of lost income or simply frustrating interactions with higher-ups on the topic. It may be of some surprise then that copywriters aren't all being fired in favour of managers typing in prompts. Instead, professional copywriters often use AI to increase their output and meet the greater demands placed on them. In this way, copywriters are acting more like editors, tweaking the final output to make sure it has a natural, appropriate tone, and refining prompts to make them better in the first place. Some have even found themselves being asked back after being replaced by AI, once higher-ups are confronted with the lost value that they provided. Copywriting is just one example though. Jobs like data entry, customer service, and software engineering are all being radically changed by AI, for better or worse. Higher-ups seem to consistently see AI as a productivity booster and often dismiss the idea of it being a threat to jobs. The narrative has consistently been that the nature of work will change, and as long as you learn to use the tools, you'll be fine. But for those who have already lost their jobs, this kind of messaging rings hollow. That's especially the case when we consider AI agents, which don't just automate tasks, but supposedly have human-like adaptability and versatility. They might need someone to manage and direct them a bit, sure, but the ROI for human employees must seem increasingly questionable in comparison. There's also already signs that the increased use of AI by businesses is eroding entry-level jobs, kicking the bottom rung off the career ladder. To take one specific industry as an example, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is quoted as saying 95% of what marketers use agencies, strategists, and creative professionals for today will easily, nearly instantly, and at almost no cost be handled by AI. And those creative professionals might find their own intellectual property at risk of being gobbled up by the data-hungry models that drive generative AI. This is a problem that really started to enter the public consciousness in 2022, with The Verge observing at the time that nobody knows what will happen next. And it seems that we're still not much closer to knowing. Last year, OpenAI's CTO at the time, Mira Murati, didn't even seem to know if their own Sora video model was trained on YouTube videos or not. This just strengthened the perception that OpenAI, and other tech giants like it, don't really care about the intellectual property they rely on. Intellectual property owners are fighting back though. Well, ones with the resources to do so. AI music startups Suno and Udio are currently being sued by major record companies such as Sony Music Entertainment, Universal Music Group's UMG Recordings, and Warner Records Incorporated for mass infringement of copyright. Disney and Universal also recently announced that they'd be suing AI image creator Midjourney for alleged use of copyrighted characters. Most countries seem to be woefully underprepared when it comes to legislation around AI though. Despite recent comments from its Copyright Office, there's still a lack of certainty in the US. The UK government has plans to give tech companies unfettered access to copyrighted material for AI training, but this has faced stiff opposition in Parliament. There seems to be a consensus among tech leaders that anything different would be impractical though. Nick Clegg, former Deputy Prime Minister and former Meta Head of Global Affairs, has claimed that asking artists for permission is implausible because these systems train on vast amounts of data and that it would kill the AI industry. I think some people wouldn't be too upset about that. For many proponents of AI though, advancing it supersedes rights owners and that, really, Pandora's box has been opened and there's no going back. Many also liken it to humans themselves. Don't all artists draw on inspiration from the works of other artists anyway? But creatives like musicians, artists and filmmakers all have legitimate concerns. Many of them already struggle to make a living, such as musicians who make less money from streaming than when physical sales dominated. Physical media isn't the income driver it once was. Creatives have dedicated endless time and money to their craft, only to have their works trained on with the intention of replacing them. There's often a dismissive attitude towards these complaints, especially with the stigma surrounding university degrees in creative fields, but this overlooks the legitimate value that arts provide to society. While not the first of its kind, the Studio Ghibli AI art trend brought this issue to the forefront early this year. People had a lot of fun with it, and the internet was flooded with AI images of people and their pets in the cozy watercolor style of Studio Ghibli. Everyone got involved, even the official White House X account, which, of course, used the opportunity to post deportation cartoons. Critics of generative AI were quick to point out the painstaking nature of the real Studio Ghibli's work, exemplified by a 4-second crowd scene that took over a year to make. Suddenly, everyone had the ability to create images in its style with just a few taps. To proponents, this has been a liberation of art, making artistic expression available to everyone without the same barriers to entry there once was. They would argue that it still takes skill after all, with the quality of the output determined by the quality of the prompt and the output refined by the user. To critics, this isn't art at all, and the time, skill and human touch is the core of what art is. Let's face it, AI art can have a unique ugliness to it. There's also concern about a loss of esteem for the artist, the respect bestowed on them for the value they contribute to the world. Artists don't just do what they do for the recognition, most get minimal anyway, and you'd have to be delusional to pick up a paintbrush solely in pursuit of getting rich. But recognition is part of the deal and ultimately affects their compensation. The human being behind the work matters to a lot of us, to know that a human hand made the brush strokes, even if those strokes are digital. And the environmental cost of AI is putting those humans only home at risk, as AI uses vast amounts of energy, water and materials. Now, the exact environmental cost of AI is debated, with some saying it's overstated due to past errors in the methodology used to calculate it, and needless alarmism from AI skeptics. AI also has the power to reduce emissions by identifying areas of inefficiency across industry, saving businesses money and CO2 emissions. As Sam Altman recently highlighted, the average ChatGPT query uses 1/15 of a teaspoon of water while only using 0.34 watt-hours of energy, roughly what an oven would use in just over a second, or a high-efficiency light bulb would use in a couple of minutes. OpenAI doesn't release figures on the average number of queries per user over any time frame, but considering OpenAI has over 400 million weekly active users, these small amounts of resource usage must add up. When you factor in OpenAI's APIs used by applications in enterprise and consumer contexts, the amount of queries being performed becomes huge. Water usage in particular is becoming such an issue that it's preventing housing development in the UK where it's badly needed. And that's not to mention the increased cost of energy. not only created by the increased demand, but because of the preferential deals that tech companies have been able to secure through their massive leverage. And I haven't even gone into the problems that AI is causing when it comes to education, or its facilitating of the spread of misinformation. To put it lightly, all this has made a lot of people very skeptical of AI. Blatant use of AI, whether that be a generated image or video, or a generated comment or post, is met with ridicule and disdain, but even minor use evokes angry, disgusted comments, a distinct kind of visceral rage. If it's from an account that hasn't previously used AI in its content, commenters will express disappointment, even betrayal that the creator would sink to using AI, an assumption that they previously had the same AI skeptic mentality. JCS Criminal Psychology, arguably the biggest true crime channel on YouTube, with multiple videos in the tens of millions of views and a legendary reputation for insightful and sometimes entertaining analysis, became a victim of this after returning from one of its many long absences. There were obvious issues with the quality of the long-awaited video, but beyond that, there was a deep resentment at the use of AI voiceovers. One, a clone of the existing narrator, Kizume, and a second, new one. The backlash was so severe that JCS apologized and returned to their original narrator. But criticism of the use of AI is often more nuanced than a blind hatred of it in all forms. If you ask most of those who take issue with AI, they're not entirely anti-AI. Only the most extreme would oppose the careful use of AI in medical or research settings, for example, and that's not really who this video is about. Most people just want AI to automate the boring stuff, giving us more time for the things we love and enjoy. After all, it would be much easier to focus on a small, extreme minority and make a video saying, look how extreme they are. With that being said, there's sometimes a lack of pragmatism around AI, a denial of reality. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. The flaws in video generation are often obvious to those with average or better eyesight. It normally takes several iterations and the use of multiple tools to get rid of flaws. As things stand right now, you can't hastily plug a prompt into a generative AI tool and have it produce flawless video. Even the best models, such as Google Veo3, are pretty glitchy. The best examples you'll see online probably have at least some manual editing involved. Now, technological progress isn't linear. We don't know for certain the speed of improvement when it comes to AI. For example, an explosive research paper recently released by Apple highlighted limitations to LLMs that can create a massive drop-off in the quality of output. With that being said, the quality of generative AI has improved massively in the space of just a few years. It hasn't even been 3 years since ChatGPT was released to the public. Even the biggest skeptics would acknowledge that there's been an objective improvement in the accuracy of generative AI's output. Without fail, critics will point out the flaws that make something obviously AI to them. Why AI will never replace the real thing. This also neglects the fact that it's not obvious to everyone, or even most people. This is difficult to understand as anything other than, well, cope. Now, forgive me, I'm going to refer to Urban Dictionary for a moment. A cope, or coping mechanism, is a psychological strategy whereby someone rejects a harsh truth and adopts a less disturbing belief instead. It's a term often used by looks-maxing incels to indicate that a given strategy is invalid or ineffective. AI critics aren't looks-maxing incels, most of them at least, but there's the same denial of reality. Denial of the reality that AI will become indistinguishable from reality, whether that's a good thing or not. For this to not be the case would require the almost immediate cessation of AI development around the world, which, isn't fucking happening, given the commercial and political gains on the table. And it isn't just video generation where this applies. Tech companies are looking to progress and scale AI as fast as possible across all domains. Despite understandable misgivings around job losses, AI does often improve efficiency and maximize profits. Dismissals of AI as a waste of time and never actually profitable for businesses simply don't marry up with reality. Research last year found that enterprise AI applications are still being used 63% of the time after 12 months. This was just 41% the year prior. Unless we see capitalism collapse, we're not seeing an end to AI anytime soon. With that being said, there's been attempts to regulate AI, with mixed success. The EU's regulations are probably the most well known, having been first proposed in April 2021, before the recent explosion in generative AI. Parliament's priority was to make sure that AI systems used in the EU are safe, transparent, traceable, non-discriminatory, and environmentally friendly. AI systems should be overseen by people rather than by automation to prevent harmful outcomes. The regulations contain different rules for different risk levels. The first category is unacceptable risk, such as AI systems that manipulate behavior, especially of vulnerable groups like children, systems that score or classify people based on personal characteristics, and biometric identification systems, including facial recognition in public. Then there's high risk, covering critical infrastructure, education and training, employment and workforce, essential services and benefits, law enforcement, immigration and border control, and legal interpretation. Generative AI systems will need to follow EU transparency and copyright rules, including AI content labeling, the prevention of illegal content generation, and the disclosure of training data sources. These regulations were adopted in August 2024 and will be fully applicable 24 months after that, with some parts coming into force sooner. The EU claims that it aims to support AI innovation and startups, requiring that national authorities provide companies with a testing environment for AI that simulates conditions close to the real world. This will help small and medium-sized enterprises compete in the growing EU artificial intelligence market. These regulations have been on the receiving end of criticism for a number of reasons. The first draft was published in mid-November 2024 and only gave approximately 1,000 stakeholders 10 days to give feedback. A second draft dropped on December 19th that same year, requiring feedback over the holiday period. Stakeholders also took issue with the external evaluators requirement, fearing that the level of oversight would be unjustified and technically infeasible. The requirement for detailed training data sourcing is a concern when it comes to trade secrets, and there's been questions around the legality of scraping copyrighted data too. For these reasons, big tech has been fiercely critical of the regulations, claiming it will stifle innovation. There's signs that the EU is feeling the pressure, as there's even been talk of pausing the rollout. By now though, this has become a common line from tech companies, especially when it comes to the EU, guided by a perception that innovation supersedes all other priorities. Their bottom line depends on it, after all. But what do you think? Are you an AI hater or a full-throated supporter of it? Or are you somewhere in between, like most people? Do you think AI needs more regulation, or has that ship already sailed? Let me know down in the comments and drop a like and subscribe when you're down there, it really helps me. I release a new video every couple of weeks. Until next time, see ya.